Hello and welcome to Sim.bc, where right now is 1823, and I just got off watching the fourth episode, the latest at this point in time of the Patrick Melrose series starring Benedict Cumberbatch in the lead role. And it's probably not a surprise to anyone that I think that this series is amazing, yeah? That this series of, what you always call them, short movies, more than actually series, because the budget and the quality of each and every episode and the acting in it is amazing. And why do I think that I want to take this up? Well, because I've been talking about this perception of we are, and the issue I think about we are as parents, parents talking about we are as a family, we are this, we are that. And what is the problem with two individuals saying that we are this, we are that? Not that much, actually. The problem comes in when you put them in the context, as I said, of a family. Two grown-ups saying we are together probably ain't that bad. It's probably just a perception of our opinion, a presentation of what we believe is right or wrong. We are this or we are not. The problem, though, as I'm going to go to, is when you talk about children as well. And sure, it is a parent's, responsibility to teach children how to behave, how to fit in with society. And that's really good, because if society taught all children, well, it would be a pretty boring society to live in now, wouldn't it? Even if that is the aim of families, to teach their children in alignment with what society expects of them, so that they actually fit into the larger picture, fit into the machinery, so that society can just turn its wheels and move on. It would be a pretty bad thing if society itself, educated everyone in every aspect of their life. School, I would argue, is enough, and then we can reach for our own personal attention and potential outside of that. But the problem is, as I said, when two parents say we are, when it's about controversial, long-lasting effects that can have a lot to do with who this child is going to become. And an instance of this, or just an example, could be occupation, saying that we are academics, we go to university, or we are not academics, we don't go to university, or you're not supposed to go to university, or oh, you won't be seen as a person in our eyes if you don't have like a PhD. These kind of different ideas and valuations of mentalities being carried on to a child from very early ages. Because what I think is shown in this clip, it sounds like I'm going to show a clip, what it's seen in this series is that, well, this idea of that children is very much aware of what is going on around them when they're growing up. As much as it shows a lot of other things, struggles, trauma, how do we deal with this, how do we deal with that? Is society really good with helping individuals? Do we see a family as a unit, or do we see it as 4, 5, 6, however, 3 individual units? Do we see every person in a family as their own, or do we just see the family itself? There are so many different themes taken up in this series. I would highly recommend you go watch it. And I will probably talk about some spoilers. I don't know yet, but we might get into some. So, spoiler warning before we continue with this entire discussion. And, well, I would like to argue that it's not necessarily, at least up until episode 4, it's not necessarily the story that I'm watching for. I'm more watching about the acting, how they're making the characters come alive, how do they deal with certain situations, not the overarching story, so to say, from where the characters move from stage 1 to stage B, so to say, at the end of the series. It's not that big of a deal for me personally, but I do know that many people think about that as a spoiler, which is kind of what a spoiler is, I guess. But I will be mostly talking about specific moments in the series, if any. Plus, the last episode isn't out yet, so I really can't spoil the entire thing. Can make a completely 180 in the end. Anyway, as I was talking about before, I kind of raised this mentality a couple of days ago of the we are problem, especially in relation to occupation and religion. Because I heard when I was younger that there were a few things you can't judge people by, and those are the people that they themselves cannot choose. And some of them made sense. For instance, where they're born, which language they speak, how they look like, what they look like, right? These are things that you can't really judge a person by because, well, they haven't chosen these things. However, what they also said, when I heard this the first time, was religion was a part of it. And to some extent, maybe, or at least, let's say it like this. Theoretically, this in my opinion, should not be one of the things that should be dealt with as they cannot change. Because I think religious freedom should be an obvious statement, right? That everybody should be able to choose whichever religion they want to be part of, and therefore you should also be able to judge someone by the religion. Not that you ever should judge someone by their religion. I know I said the exact same thing and meant two different things here, but what I mean to say is that you should be able to change it, and you should never judge anyone just because of their religion, right? Don't do that unless they're like really fanatic about it, but then it's probably a problem with their personality, and you can't really trace that back to the religion itself. So just imagine you didn't hear me say that for the first time. Don't judge anyone because of their religion, okay? Just clear marks. However, what we can see with parents, probably not in the series though, but we're gonna move into more series specific things later. What you can see is that, well, parents are saying that, well, you should be this, you should be that. And if we, for instance, then say religion, you should be Christian, Hindu, Jew, Muslim, whatever you want to be, right? No, not whatever you want to be. You're gonna be whatever we want you to be. And we're gonna raise you with religion in mind until you're like, what, 18, 20, let's just say something like that, when society fully recognizes you as a grown up and as a person who can, go and vote and stuff like that, yeah? When society fully recognizes you as a person, we're gonna say, well, you can be whoever you want to be, you can do whatever you want. That's easy to say, yeah? In theory, that works. That, well, now you can be whoever you want to be. Who do you want to be? And a person who has been raised in a certain way, in a certain religion, in a certain mindset, might just, atheists alike, right? Can walk up and say, well, I'm allowed to be whoever I want to be. However, I've been raised with this mentality in mind for like the last 18 to 20 years. It's going to be really hard for me to just change all of that just because I can. That's not really practical. And what I would like to, or rather that's just a pretext, right? Just a context to what I've been talking about a bit before a couple of days ago. Now, moving into the actual series and how I would like to apply that this problem is shown in the series is all of these different problems with Patrick Melrose then, the guy played, or the character played by Benedict Cumberbatch, if ever I can pronounce his name correctly. Cumberbatch, Cucumber, whatever. But Benedict Cumberbatch. Anyway, he's playing Patrick Melrose, the main lead, the person that everything is kind of revolving around, one can argue. And we can see how he has very big problems with his dad, for instance, right? And when he's growing up, he has a very detached family. This is just my perception yet again of how I'm viewing the series. But it seems like he is having a very detached family experience when he was growing up. It was more of a rich presumption, I would say, that these assumptions that society makes about rich people, how we believe them to raise kids, if that is true or not, might be. But this kind of perception hits home very much for me, that I'm thinking that, yeah, that's very much plausible that this could have been the case, especially since this is taking place, I don't know an exact year, maybe they've told me, maybe they haven't. But I'm thinking this is, post World War II, 50s, maybe 60s, right? That kind of era. And then it specifically fits in, this idea of children should be seen but not heard, and even that is a bit liberal, right? All of that kind of mentality, and the mentality of whatever happens to you as a child don't really count. Which is a very old school mentality. I know that some people are, unfortunately, in my opinion, still rolling with it, but I would say that that's just sick, right? That kids is actually, and I think that this is what the series is trying to show, that people have this mentality, but that is not what is shown in action, that kids actually are taking on a lot about their parents and their environment, and that is actually shaping them to be the people that they grew up to be, which is also shown in the main character when he is having, as I said, issues with both his mom and his dad, actually, both that he is terribly afraid of one of them, and on the other hand, he feels too much comfort towards the other, even though they're not really providing that much comfort. But it's all in perspective, right? It's all in relation to each other, that if one is the devil and the other one is just a regular mean person, the regular mean person is going to be seen as an angel, right? If that's the only two things that you have to compare. Which is quite, in my opinion, right, kind of obvious in the series, and I think that they display it in such a nice and neat way. However, why I haven't been talking about the other episodes is because, well, I haven't really gotten a clear picture of the entire character cast, of all of the things that they're trying to persuade, if there are any overarching themes. Yes, one may argue that I should have waited to the 5th episode being out and then doing this, but what they took up in this 4th episode I thought was so bloody interesting that I thought, why not take it up? And the idea in this episode is that over the first 3 episodes, we've been like catching between him being a grown-up and him being a child. His childhood trauma that is alluded to, I would say that it's pretty obvious from the beginning, right? But, well, they don't actually explicitly say it until episode 3. However, he is having huge problems with his dad. We can just say it like that. He's been traumatized from basically, right, from he was like 8 years old, 9 years old, and they're kind of switching between these two perspectives, yeah. Him being afraid of his dad, and to some extent his mother, I would argue, and his dad's friends, and then him being, a grown-up and having all of these issues and all these problems, it's drugs, it's alcohol, schizophrenic, homicidal, all of these different things taken up at the same time. And as I said, we're kind of moving back and forth between those, which is creating a kind of great perspective. However, in the 4th episode, what they're doing, what is the difference here, yeah, is that now he's kind of taking on the role of a father, yeah. He's having a bit of a family. It's not clearly explained. It's clear that we have had a huge jump in time between the 3rd and the 4th episode, which is also has been, I guess, between the 1st and the 3rd. Anyway, and what we can see is that he is kind of developed into his own dad and displaying similar personality issues in his character, which I thought was kind of interesting, because this is a guy that's probably been trying to, if we look at the character, probably been trying to avoid this all of his life, and he still ended up being almost like very identical to his dad. Obviously not the same, but some character traits are still there. The narcissism and the egoism, the guy trying to do things out of love, however, it just comes across as very egoistic. His dad and his mom, they kind of split, and now he's kind of having the same issue. He's standing in front of the same issue. Will we have a divorce because of the problems that I have? And they're kind of paying the homage towards this as well over the course of the episode, which was really nice that they're kind of developing his dad as a character in the 2nd episode, and now they're paying it off 2 episodes later, where they're really pushing on the ideas that what was really malice about his dad's character is really portrayed and shines through in his character right now, even though we believe, yeah, as the viewer, because we've been following his path, yeah, from the first, 2nd, and 3rd episode, to see that he don't really want to be like his dad. He absolutely dislikes him. And now moving on to the 4th episode and seeing that, wow, you're behaving in almost the exact same way, is kind of the idea that when you're a kid, or as long as your parents are alive, I'd say, you can kind of look to them and see it as a reflection of the future. You can kind of see it as a future mirror, because you're probably going to, if you not only look like them, kind of probably behave very much like them. Not always, obviously not always, but generalization, I would say that most people will. Because if you have a very good relationship with your parents, then you probably think they did some really good things and we're trying to attain the same thing. And if you really hate them, then you can move so far away from your parents that you end up being the exact same anyway. Because you tried to move so far away, which meant that you like went full circle and you're back to what you actually tried to avoid. Kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So how is this relating to we are? Well, basically, this we are perspective is the idea that they, as parents, probably didn't say, well, they did, though. They were saying all the time that, Patrick do this, Patrick do that, the main character yet again, do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that. This is what you are. This is what you're supposed to be. Even when his dad dies, and that's kind of how the first episode kicks off, so I wouldn't say that that's a major spoiler, right? Even though there were spoiler warning in the beginning, so this is your own fault. This on you, mate, yeah? They're still kind of having this problem that his parents' friends are telling him that, well, this is the way that you're supposed to act. This is the way you're supposed to be. You should go to this party. You should go to this fundraiser. You should go to this event. You should go to that event. This is how you should behave there. This is how you should behave there. So it's kind of shining through his character moments, let's say, when he's growing up as well. So you can argue that he's never really leaving the childhood because, well, there's so many anchors in his childhood based on trauma that he can't really let go. However, that's a discussion for another time. But this entire we are approach is that he has been told what he is, and then he sees what his parent is, and he tries to fight away from that. Yeah, he tried to fight away from that. And this is kind of what happens. He's been told he is one way. He has been living his entire life this way. And now he gets, what you would say, the free will and the room to do whatever he wishes, whatever he wants. And in that moment, he is trying to fight back towards what he was told he was, even though it kind of insinuates that he'd been doing that a while before the first episode kicks off as well. But then when he tries to fight back what he is, how he actually is, and what he don't want to be, he kind of gets back to what he didn't want to be. So, being raised in this direction to try to avoid here, but then when he is here, trying to do everything opposites to this particular place, and it comes from a good place, right? He wants to stop with the bad things he's doing, but he don't want to become his malicious father. But then when he tries to avoid it, he goes in a different trajectory, and he ends up here anyway in the 4th episode. We'll see what happens in the 5th episode, but I would just like to argue yet again that kids are seem to be very aware, right? I don't have any kids on my own. I don't really have any say in this, but I've been a kid myself. One can argue I still am. It's about his mentality. It's about the perception, right? And kids very much are aware of their environment and their surroundings more than grown-ups would probably give them credit for. And that, I think, is shown very well throughout, well, every episode, really. There are always kids involved with parents who are a bit snarky, egoistic. They're not acting in a loving way. And if they're acting in a loving way, they can be too, what you would say, dependent on the child and not really giving them the freedom and the space that they do need. And you probably know what I mean, but you should actually still watch the series because they're introducing it in a new and interesting way. Still, and as well, this idea of we're telling you what you are, so we just assume that you're not the other way around as a child, right? So we're not giving you the potential to grow. We're not giving you the choice that you actually need to have in order to actually succeed and fit in a society where you need to actually, well, fit in order to utilize the most of your potential. And I think that this is kind of sad that this is a thing. I think that it's very well presented in the series. And I would say, also I could say that this is about much of a scary series that I can watch without going absolutely bloody mental with nightmares, so to say. Because I had nightmares after watching this series. I can stand for that any day of the week. Not that it's probably not classified as a scary series, but just that the way it's presented, it feels so real. It lives up to my expectations about lots of the issues that they're presenting. In an unfortunate way, right? It's an unfortunate view and a very pessimistic view of how you can grow up based on trauma. But I would yet again say that that's kind of how I would argue that things would go if someone were to ask me. This is like if someone had the basis of the series, right? Episode like 1 and 2, whatever, presenting the characters, and they ask, where are these going to go in the future? I would probably argue in a very similar direction that they're going. Now, I might say this because I watched the series and it's so clear cut to me that these are the steps that are followed because, well, I've seen it. But I would like to argue that before this, I would also do that, which is, of course, impossible to say, right, objectively. But yeah, just my point of view of the We Are issue and Patrick Melrose from episode 1 to 4. I think this is a brilliant series. You should watch it. Obviously, when someone says that to you, you go in with the mindset that this is supposed to be good, and when you don't get that catch, that hook directly, well, you tend to doze off. But I would just say that Benedict Cumberbatch is a really good actor, and that really shines through, as well as there are a lot of good actors in these series. As I said, it feels like a long movie split into different sections, like Game of Thrones, right? There's an overarching story, but yet an individual story in each of the episodes, and the actors are really good. Really some A-list characters in there. Totally recommend it. Good critique to society. It's everything I want on a bloody Saturday night, Sunday evening, right? Anyway, mates, have a nice one, and I'll see you tomorrow.